web server, and we've used our Raspberry Pi running Apache as our web server software. We've been using PHP as our server-side scripting language, and in this video we're going to be showing you how to install and use MySQL as the system database, and we should have a fully functioning website at the end of it. Okay, so here is a link that contains a few useful files. Firstly, it's going to contain my notes of everything we do to build the database and how to use the database. The syntax is hopefully perfect, so you shouldn't have to worry about copying it off the screen. And also the raw files, my HTML and my PHP files that you can copy straight onto your Raspberry Pi without having to type everything out. And if you follow the video, I would recommend getting these files first, and it should hopefully make learning the process a little bit easier. So the first command we need to run is the installation commands, and we're going to run the following. We're going to run sudo apt-get install, and we're going to install MySQL server and MySQL client. So the server is going to be the side that will do actually hold all the data. The client is essentially it's going to allow us to actually access that database and make alterations to it. So we're going to need both of those. So we install that package. Okay, so we just allow this to run and complete, and pause the video for now. You don't have to watch this. Okay, so halfway through the installation package, you're going to get prompted for this. It's essentially all it's asking for is a password for your database. It won't be the same as your Linux operating system username and password. So the username to access the database is going to be root. So I'm going to give the password 123 and just hit enter to OK. And it's just going to ask to double check that to make sure we get it right. And it will continue with the installation. Right, so if we run the following command, MySQL -u for username, which we give root, and -p, and it's going to ask us for our password, which is password 123. We've logged into our database, so we've actually connected to the MySQL server, and from here we can create a database and actually then start creating tables within that database. So to save you having to do too much research, I've created a file called database creation notes.sql, and this is the syntax you're going to require to create the database. So what you need is to type create database, Raspberry Pi database. So my database is going to be called Raspberry Pi DB, and at the end of any command you give to your MySQL server, you have to finish it with a semicolon. So we hit that. Okay, so we've now built the database, which is completely empty. So we now want to utilize that database. So we're going to use the command use Raspberry Pi DB, which will allow us to actually go into the context of that particular database. So we're now actually in the context of the Raspberry Pi DB database. So if I run the command show tables, it's currently empty. So what we're going to do is, if you've got the file in front of you, you're going to type in the following entries. So you're going to select the section here where it says create table, and we're going to enter the following values. We're going to create a user called user ID, which is going to be an auto-incrementing key, meaning that for each user we enter in this example, they're going to sequentially be given a unique ID. We're going to give it a title for a person's like Mr. Mrs. First name, surname, the age of that user, and their email address. This will become a bit more clearer when we see the actual website. So we're just going to copy that and paste that into here, and then hit enter. And now when we run the command show tables, we'll see that there is a in the Raspberry Pi database there is a table called users. Okay, so if you bring my notes file across, what we're going to do is we're going to come down to this piece of syntax here. So what we're going to do is we're going to insert into the table users one row, and that's going to exist of title, first name, surname, age, and email address. So we're going to insert into the values and they match up in order. So obviously the title will be Mr, first name will be Matthew, surname will be Manning, age 27, email raspberrypi@example.com. So if I copy that, pop that to one side, and I just paste that into here, make sure I've got my semicolon at the end, and hit enter. If I now type select all from users, you can now see that that entry has been entered into and it's created a unique ID of 1. So if I just quickly copy this second example here, copy that, and again if we paste that in there and just hit enter, you'll now see that if I run the same command, select all from users, we have 2 rows and we have those different entries, and again it's auto incremented and they have unique IDs. Now if we wanted to, there's one piece of syntax that we can use, and scroll down here, is where we could delete a user from the database. So if I copy this, what we're saying here is delete from the table users, which is our table here, users from the table where the title in this column here equals Mrs. So if I then hit enter, and again we look at, so we run select all from users, we can see that that user has been deleted. Now the last bit of syntax that can often be useful is down here, is this line we have, this final one, which is drop tables, drop database Raspberry Pi DB. And what that would do is it would actually delete the entire database in the system. You don't actually have to do a lot. There's no real warning. It's so if we were just to type that in there, and then we would say show tables, so we can see there that it's replying with the error no database selected, because the database we created, Raspberry Pi DB, has been deleted. So it's incredibly important that you get your syntax correct if you are going to be working on the command line. So the next stage that we move on to from here is going to be how we link all the components that we've built together. Okay, so if you followed me this far and gone through my videos in the order that we built the system up, we originally started with our standard Linux Debian build. We then installed Apache web server. We then installed PHP for our server-side scripting. And then we've just installed in this video MySQL is the last thing we've just done. Essentially what we've created is a LAMP server. LAMP is an acronym that is used for all of these components. So like it says here, Linux, Apache, MySQL, PHP, and also you can use Perl and Python, other examples. You can install LAMP as a big one installation package. But what we've done here is we've installed each component individually. So it's not technically a LAMP installation, it's kind of like a manual LAMP installation. But that is what we've created here. Okay, so there's one last thing we have to do that ties the whole thing together and actually allows us to function and get it to work. And that last thing we have to do is install a PHP MySQL module. So the following command, sudo apt-get install PHP 5, because that's the version of PHP we're running, -MySQL, run that module, install that, go through the procedure that you should be familiar with by now. And what that will do is it will create a module for PHP that can talk and read and write and edit to a MySQL database. Okay, so that's installed successfully. So the last thing we have to do is we just need to restart the Apache services. And that command is sudo service apache 2 restart. So if we hit that, it'll stop and start our Apache services. And there we go. If we just quickly check, sudo service apache 2 status, we'll see that that's all up and running. So now we're ready to move on to combining the 4 components into an actual web server. So if you go to the download and unzip the file that was provided in the link at the beginning of the video, you'll find a directory called www and MySQL. These are the notes that hopefully you've been using along the way. So what we need to do is we need to quickly recreate the database. So if we go to this database creation notes and open in a text editor, if you select the first section of syntax, so we're going to create a database, use it, enter, we're going to create our database. So you should be able to go to our Raspberry Pi, enter into the database with our password, and then just literally right click and paste all the information to there, hit enter, and then we should be able to say use Raspberry Pi DB database and show tables. And in there we have, we say select all from users, give a blank database. The next thing we need to do is we need to use a program such as WinSCP to connect and transfer the files onto the machine. Now, people are going to probably give me a hard time about using this. There are 1,000,001 ways you can get these files on. You could type them in manually, you could use FTP, whatever your flavor is, you know, there's no right or wrong way. Okay, so the way I do this is I go to the root directory, I go to var, and then I go to temp, and then what I'll do is I'll go into my directory of these files we've got. These are the files that have been provided, and I literally drag them onto there, and then once they're all onto there, what I do is I will come to my command line and I'll change into the directory /var/temp, and I look, and there are all of our files. So then what I'll do is I'll come in and I'll say sudo move all into /var/www, and if we have a look at that, they're all gone. And if you move into var www, there are all of our files. If we then open up our browser and we try and type in the IP address of our web server, we'll now see that we have our site. So what I'd created and what we have there is, if we put this to one side and this side here, we have a website that contains our standard index page, which is what we've got here. We have the ability to enter in our title and enter in our details and submit that to the database. The details will be sent from the index page, will be passed through to a file called submit.php. This PHP file will convert our entries, our HTTP post, and will be entered into the database. If we then click view users, we'll be looking at this file here called view.php, and that will show us the users database. If we and we've also got a default CSS page for some text formatting, the logo, which is this logo here, and test.php, testphp.php, which is, if you go /testphp.php, you'll get this test page. Okay, so if I enter my details into the system, Matthew Manning, age 28, and I just say Raspberry Pi at example.com and hit submit, it will say that my page has been populated. This is the submit.php page which we've got here. I then click back, and if I want to view that data, I can then look at that there, and if I just expand that so it looks proper, we then have user's ID, Matthew Manning, and those details there. Do one more for just example. I'll say Susan White, age 25, S White at example.com. Gets been populated, go back, view users, and the auto increment's working. And again, if we come in here and enter into our database, there we go, and say show tables, of our tables and select all from users. And there are 2 entries, and we have that in both via Apache, PHP and MySQL, or just purely in the SQL database.